Welcome back to part two of our Pride special, which is called Prejudice. Can you guess what we're going to be talking about? I am Nigel.
And I'm Joshua.
A bit delayed there, Josh.
I was a bit
You, were you...
distracted looking at my phone.
Pay
I was checking
attention,
my
we're
notes. I was
recording.
checking my notes. It's fine.
We're recording. Pay attention. So yes, we will be talking about prejudice in this episode. We'll also be having a little bit of a moan because Josh likes to be a moany old bitch, and we have another special guest on board today, talking about some issues that are very, very important to them. So, without further ado, let's crack on with the show. It's time for the news. In the news this week, we are going to be talking about some news that has been shared with us, and it's about LGBTQ plus parents that face trauma. So that's talking about parents who are themselves LGBTQ plus, and it's a lady called Libby King who lives in a town called Eastbourne, and has started a family group for LGBTQ plus parents called Born This Way. Born being a play on the word of Eastbourne from the name of the town. She started 5 years ago in her hometown of Eastbourne as a support group to provide a non-judgmental space for LGBTQ plus parents, their children, as well as prospective parents. Now, it's interesting to note that following a survey, about 56% of LGBTQ plus parents, so over half, face negative comments about their families. And Libby King has gone on record to say that people assume it has to be a mummy and a daddy, and a man and a woman. So they meet with this group to try and tackle those challenges and those misconceptions. I mean, what do you think of that, Josh?
I think it's a topic that we don't really ever think of, really, do we? We always think about like the youth kind of thing, and you know what I mean. And I think that it's a shame that we don't really talk about that much, because I have seen articles over the years, like whenever there's two gay dads and they happen to be in a news article, the comments are saying take the kids off them, they're pedos, and all this stuff.
The comments are atrocious.
And I always think they're in a loving home, the kids are smiling, they're happy, and you just want to tear them out of their arms and traumatize them children just because they happen to have two dads. It's the same as when we very rarely we see like adverts where they depict two same-sex parents on an advert. The comments again are just disgusting, and when you think about it, you probably do have same-sex parents where they try and get their kids involved with other parent groups like kids, and you probably will have other parents that don't want to be involved with that family because they're probably thinking, oh, we don't really want our kids to be learning that kind of thing, so they would be shunned, they wouldn't be invited to things. The kids might not be invited to birthday parties, for example, just because of the parents. So when you think of it like that, it's quite a traumatizing thing, because not only is it affecting them, it's also going to probably affect their children just because they happen to have two mums or two dads.
I think the thing that frustrates me is the misconceptions that people that are not same-sex couples, that see same-sex couples with that have children, they're bringing up a loving family. The things that people say, I mean, they make accusations of child abuse and stuff like that, and they couldn't be more wrong. I mean, I know plenty of people that are in same-sex relationships that have children, and they couldn't be better parents. They are so loving, they are so caring, and the misconception out there that they think that gay couples, whether it be lesbians or gay men, are adopting children or having children to abuse them. I just think it's appalling, and it's such an abhorrent thing to say, and to label people from the gay community, as we've seen a number of times, as paedophiles because they're bringing up a family, and it's just wrong. And I think that's what the point of that article was about, and what Libby has set out to do, to bring people together for um, for this.
Yeah, and I think that, well, not everybody, but a lot of hetero couples, they take it for granted that they can just have a kid if they want to have a kid. Obviously, barring having any like medical issues, but most of them, if they want to have a kid and start a family, they can just do it. But when it comes to same-sex couples, it's not that easy. You have to, if you want to foster or adopt, for example, the process of that is extremely long, extremely difficult, very traumatic. You have to have all these evaluations and go through every single detail of your life and personal life. So you have to fight for these kids. Having IVF, especially if you're two men, you don't have that. That's the issue. You can't just have a child. You can't just have a donor or anything. You've got to find a surrogate and all this kind of stuff. So I think that with same-sex couples, because they have to fight so much harder to have a child compared to straight people, I feel like that's probably why they do make such good parents, because it's something that they haven't just got on a whim or on an accident or just easily done it. They've had to actually fight for it and really work hard and know that this is what they really want. Because
Yeah,
either way, you have to go through evaluations. If you adopt or foster, there's a massive strict progress of going through. IVF, you can't just say, "Oh, I want IVF. Yep, here you go, done. You're pregnant." You have to go through doctors and all these different things to get to that stage. So I think the reason they have to fight so hard for it, I think that's why they make such good parents.
yeah. I mean, like I say, my experiences from people that I know that are same-sex couples that have got kids, my experiences of them are they're loving parents, that they couldn't do anything more for them, for their kids. You know, they bring them up well. Um, they're so well looked after. You know, and I think it's about tackling those misconceptions, and like you say, highlight the challenges faced. You know, in fact, you know what we should do? If anyone that's listening is a same-sex couple that's got kids, that you're same-sex couple parents, if you're listening and you want to share your journey, and you want to fight off those misconceptions, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Drop us a message, and we'd love to have you on board and have a chat with you. In this episode, we are talking about the prejudice that we have faced as a community. To say that life being LGBTQ plus has been easy or is easy would be wrong. It would be factually wrong. I've grown up during a period of time, a period of history where it was extremely, extremely difficult. I grew up through Section 28. Now, for those who may not be familiar, who may be younger than me, have not had to experience that. Section 28 was a piece of legislation that came in 1988 and existed all the way through till 2003. It was legislation that banned the promotion of homosexuality by local authorities. So education in schools, anything like that, anything that could be seen to promote homosexuality as something that was a good thing or that wasn't bad. So that's something we're going to be talking about, because the theme of this episode is about prejudice. The last episode was Pride. This is Prejudice. Josh, your experiences of Section 28, how has that impacted you?
I think when I was growing up, I didn't really think about it because it doesn't really pop because you're not taught about it. It doesn't really pop into your mind. But as I've got older, I've kind of thought back, and I've always thought, oh, when did they mention same-sex people? When did they mention being gay and things like that? And then when I think about it, it never was. Um, I never had any lessons at school that ever mentioned anything to do with being LGBT plus at all. Every sex ed class was always straight couples and how to have babies and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, I was never taught about it. The teachers never mentioned it. So, and you didn't really see it on the media because we didn't really have internet much then, really. The newspapers were all incredibly negative against the community. So you didn't really have any education at all, which is quite dangerous actually, because that puts you at risk because you're going to get yourself into situations that are dangerous because you haven't been taught about the risks and how to be safe and
Mm.
all the and a lot of internalized like holding in a lot of my feelings. I often think I knew that I was different when I was probably about 12, 13, and not long after that then I realized that I was gay, and I held that in till I was like 19, probably nearly 20. And I often think if I was educated at school and it wasn't such this taboo subject and it was actually taught, I could have came out sooner. And I think a lot of us my age and your age, you've lost your entire teenage years really because you were never really your true self. So our teenage years, we never really got to have them properly, and that's
Yeah.
something that we're never going to get that back, and that's just something that we have to deal with ourselves.
I mean, for me, throughout my entire education, this law was in place. Um, it was the local Section 28 of the Local Government Act, which was enacted in May 1988. So, uh, I mean, I left my secondary education in the year 2000, 3 years before the law was repealed. Um, so, and yes, you're right. Looking back, I mean, I look back at relationship education, sex education, and it was all predominantly focused on heterosexual relationships, around procreation and heterosexual families and things like that. Um, and little known fact here, the law, Section 28, was actually partly inspired by a 1983 storybook, which was called Jenny Lives with Eric and Martin, which aimed to give children information about different types of family relationships. Um, and it was the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, whose name and voice will probably send shivers down people's spines. But there was something that she said, um, in the Tory party conference, which was kind of stoking the fires of the introduction of Section 28, and I'm going to play that piece now for people.
Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay.
So that was Margaret Thatcher. That was the words that she said, and I think it's quite abhorrent that she had those views and that those views were shared. But I think that's quite of the time, really, where homosexual views towards homosexuality were so negative, and in many ways they still are. I mean, we still face prejudice today, and I think that the cause of a lot of prejudice is lack of education, lack of understanding. Um, if we hadn't had that law in place, then there's a lot of people out there that are out there being prejudiced, homophobic, biphobic, transphobic. They would be they'd probably be better well informed, I think now. If they'd
Well,
had
yeah, because a lot of kids' education now is, well, a lot of it back then was learned from the little tiny pockets of the internet or from your parents who got their information from the newspapers.
exactly.
I think Section 28 ended when I was 13.
Yeah,
So right
2003 it
right
ended.
right around when I was starting to really question myself. But I will say, even the following 3 years of my school, I still was never taught anything about same-sex relationships. So even though I had 3 years after that, it still never came in for me. I was never taught it.
Mm.
And even showing my age now, nearly 20 years later, we're going through a very similar thing again with trans people. We're having restrictions put in schools, and they're not wanting to teach kids things like this. And we just keep, I don't know what it is, but humans, we have such a flaw with repeating mistakes. We make such huge mistakes, and we always say never again, or let's learn from them and not do this. And then give it 10 years or whatever, and we forget, and then we do it all over again, but on somebody else.
Mm. I mean, 30 years after the law was made, so what was that, about 2018, Baroness Knight, who was the woman that was largely responsible for introducing it, said that she was sorry if the law hurt anyone and that her intention had been the well-being of children. I mean, how about that?
Wow.
Sorry. You know, I
Sorry
mean,
if.
yeah, sorry if the law hurt anyone. Of course it fucking hurt people. Of course it did. I mean, that law had far-reaching effects. There's far-reaching damage caused because of that legislation, because it just emboldened people to be justified in being homophobic and to say that being gay or being trans or being bi was wrong. I mean, come on, I mean, it really annoys me. It really frustrates me, right? That you've got, it's always that they're always saying it's about protecting children. Well, protecting them from what? Protecting them from what exactly? Protecting them from being well informed, protecting them from being able to make their own choices because they're better educated, make their own decisions, or do we want to mold kids' minds into thinking one way that, oh, you can't be that because that's wrong, you've got to be this, because that's essentially what it is on the other side, isn't it? That is essentially what it is. They're saying this is how you're made, this is how you should be, you've got to be, you're a boy, you've got to marry a girl, you can't marry another man. If you're a girl, you can't marry another girl. That's essentially the route they're going down in trying to stop this education. And
Well,
it really infuriates me when people go on about it's about protecting children, and then the way they say these things implies that being homosexual makes you a paedophile, when you couldn't be much further from the truth in that. I mean, paedophilia is much more statistically prominent in the heterosexual community, mainly heterosexual men.
yeah, that's
Am I
just their
wrong?
trump cards, isn't it? But when she says sorry if whatever, the damage that caused probably still resonates in people today. Like I
Mm,
probably still have deep-rooted mental issues due to my experiences at school because of
yeah.
things like this. And there has been like independent research done where they say 7 in 10 LGBT plus youth have suicidal thoughts. So it's nearly the 70% of LGBT plus youth have said that they have suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
So if you want to help kids and you want to protect kids, why are you not stamping out this direct cause that's causing these suicide thoughts? You just need to educate them that they can be who they are, educate kids that you don't discriminate and you don't attack people due to their minority that they may be, and because we're not doing this is why we've got adults now that are completely ignorant. They don't have the correct facts. They just hate people for being gay or being a different color to them because they're not educated. And I think education really does start when you're young. If you are taught these things at school, you take them into your adulthood. And we just need to look at the older middle-aged people right now. That's evidence of what happens when you hide these kind of educational tools in schools.
But that's you make a valid point there. Education starts when you're young. Yes, kids have got to be kids. They've got to be allowed to use their imagination. They've got to be allowed to play. Do what kids do. But there is a point when education starts with kids, when they start learning about the world, start learning about people, and it develops from there. And education around relationships, I agree, should be age appropriate. It should be age appropriate, 100%. I would never suggest otherwise. But when it comes to educating around relationships, when it's age appropriate and you're teaching kids around heterosexual relationships, you should also be teaching them around same-sex relationships, that sometimes people are like this. People are gay. Some people are trans. Some people are bi. And it's done in such an appropriate way, the same way as they would for heterosexual relationship education. It's really not difficult, and just teaching them that if that happens to you, if your life goes in that direction, it's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. But instead, you've got people telling kids, that's wrong. You can't be like that. You shouldn't be like that. There's people being disowned by their parents because they've come out, and it just really saddens me. It horrifies me, the way that just because you are gay, bi, trans, it's like people just want to, oh no, you're wrong, you're faulty, I'm getting rid of you. What? It shouldn't happen.
But protect the kids, look after the kids until the kids tell you they're LGBT plus, then you can just chuck
and then
them
you
in
cut
the
them
bin.
off. Yeah, you chuck them out.
It's the same as the anti-abortion people. Don't get abortions, but once the kid's born, we're not bothered then.
Yeah, but
it's never about protecting children at all. It's about you being a bigot and you putting your views out on other people. That's what it is. You get a kick out of it. That's what the real reason is.
And it's when they say it's indoctrination. It's not. Education is not indoctrination. I'm sorry. It really isn't. And it really isn't that hard to show empathy towards someone because, like we've discussed on our coming out episode, when we talked about coming out, the difficulty you go through as a person, as an individual, when you realize, you learn about yourself, and you come to terms with the fact that, yes, I'm gay, and I need to deal with this. I need to accept it, and I need to learn about me. I need to explore me and what it means to be gay to me. And going from there, it's like that whole thing of, you're exploring your life now, and then you've got people telling you that you're wrong, and you've got to go through that stage of coming out. You've admitted it to yourself, you've accepted it yourself, you've then got to admit it to others. We never have people coming out saying, Mum, Dad, I've got something to tell you. I'm straight. We don't have that, do we?
No. And the thing is, they say it's indoctrination, but the way I went through school and many others, it was all straight people. All of the sex education was watching straight couples have sex, which was incredibly graphic. And every TV advert, straight people, every movie, every TV show, everything was all straight people. And yet
putting condoms on a banana.
And yet I'm still turned out to be gay. So how is that indoctrination when you put me through all this education at school, and yet I didn't turn out straight. And we've got thousands of people that went through, well, millions that went through the same education system, and they've turned out gay. So
Exactly.
how is showing people same-sex relations alongside straight sex in classrooms, how is that going to make you gay? Because the straight stuff never made me straight.
Exactly. And again, you hit the nail on the head. It's the whole thing of, people say, oh, we can't have same-sex education in schools. We can't have them showing this. I mean, they think that they're going to show us, they think they're going to show kids graphic videos of men having sex. No, that's not going to happen. It's not about that.
Even though I had to watch full-on penetration explicit videos at school of straight people, but that's fine.
Porn.
That's straight people. That's what they were making me. Yeah, but they said it was educational videos, so it's not porn, it's educational. But
of course
it's the same media that kicked off not long ago about sex education for 3 to 4 year olds, and they were like, oh my god, that's a disgrace, ban it, and they had petitions and everything. But none of them actually read into it, and it was actually just talking about consent. So it was teaching children what consent is, which would protect them from being sexually abused, because they would know what is wrong and what isn't, and they can tell people. And then they're like, no, ban it. And I'm just like, so you've not even read it, and it's tools to help children, and you just want to ban it because you've got a bit of red meat waved in your face.
Yeah, tools to help kids keep themselves safe and recognize when things are wrong. But it's classic jumping the gun, isn't it? They see a headline, but they don't read the article, and they think, oh no, that's terrible, that's outrageous, that's bad. Let's form a protest. Let's form a little lobby group.
So they can't think for themselves. They can only give their attention for like 10 seconds. That's it. They don't look into anything. You could tell them the moon is made of actual cheese in a headline, and they would just go, yeah, that's it, it's made of cheese. They won't even look into it.
Yeah, but they'd be like, oh, what cheese? It might be a cheese I like, but it might be a cheese I don't like. And if it's a cheese I don't like, I'm going to be outraged.
Best not be any of that foreign cheese. That's what they'll say.
Yeah. Well, it would be, because it's moon cheese.
True.
So
yeah, but they wouldn't think that far ahead, would they? Honestly.
Well, no, they're a bit thick, to be honest. But yeah, I mean,
a lot.
But you're right. I mean, going back to what you said, you've got heterosexual relationship education and sex education. None of that turned us straight. None of it made us straight. It didn't put us off being straight. We are gay because that is how our genetic build-up is. That's how we're genetically built. It's the way our bodies work, our minds work, and our attraction works. It's just frustrating that you've got people that are so ignorant, they just don't want to learn. And now we have a special guest on board for this week's episode of the podcast. It's part of our Pride special. It's part 2, and the topic that we're covering, or the theme for this episode, is prejudice, because as a community, as a wider community, we do face a lot of prejudice. And we have one of our special guests, who is Louise, who is a host on the Tea Elders podcast, which you can subscribe to and view on YouTube. Hello, Louise.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name's Louise. As you said, I'm the host of the Tea Elders podcast, where I interview various people within the trans non-binary community. But yeah, I'm a trans woman from the north of England. I transitioned 28 years ago when I was 16, so back in like the late 90s. So I've seen a lot go on within the community and things like that. And here I am 28 years later and being in this car crash that we currently are now.
Yeah, you're still going strong though, and that's something to be admired, I think. And yeah, you're right. you're right. We are experiencing a car crash when it comes to trans rights at the moment, and the one thing I think I kind of resonate with is it's very reminiscent of Section 28 for the gay community, and I do find it quite bad that history seems to be repeating itself, and it's just absolutely horrible to see. And I think it's right that the trans community have as much support out there as possible. But yeah, so you've got a lot of experience of living as a trans woman, and hopefully by having a chat with us today, you'll be able to share a lot of that experience, and it might help with other people that are going through transitioning and trying to live life with dignity and respect as a trans person. So we're going to talk to you about obviously some of your episodes and living life as a trans woman, and things that we can do as a community to support each other and make sure that we're going forward and going in the right direction, I think. So Josh, I think you wanted to start off, didn't you?
Yeah, I'll do a bit of talking now. No, Nigel's done loads of talking.
You're welcome to interject at any point. You know that.
Oh, you're hard to cut over, you are, when you're on a roll. But yeah, I've been listening to a lot of your episodes. They're very good. Like when I'm pottering around the house and doing things, I like to have them on in my ears so I can listen to everything. But on one of your latest episodes, I think it was 2 episodes ago, because you do more episodes than us, you're very quick at those. You were talking about your transition journey and how different it was to your wives, because you did it through the NHS and your wife did it through private. And I know you've had a couple of recent guests as well who went private. Could you tell us a bit about what that experience is like and how different they are?
So obviously I went the NHS route. I mean, obviously I was a lot younger at the time and having to deal with a lot of the stuff by myself. So my only route was the NHS, and I kind of like had to up sticks and down to London to the big GIC that was down there, because that's where we had to be, and there was a lot of gatekeeping back then. And that was technically the only avenue that I could go, because I didn't have the financial means to do stuff. And yes, it was a long wait for things, nowhere near how the current state of affairs are. But it was still the period of the waiting to get into the gender identity clinic, then doing the real life test, as they call it, then the set amount of time on hormones, and then eventually getting towards surgeries. And yes, my wife went private, and a few of my guests have gone private as well. And I know in the UK we have a few private funded organisations that prescribe the hormones, and will do referrals for surgery, or some of them will actually do the surgery themselves here in the UK. I know from my wife's perspective, she got her HRT prescribed privately, but that is quite a big financial hit for people. It's not cheap. And then especially when you get to the point of like surgeries and things like that, she went to Thailand for hers, like 2 of my other guests that I spoke to on my podcast. And even though going over to Thailand, she still had to pay like £15,000. But as I said to her, I says, it's your life and what makes you whole and complete. So if we're going to be paying that off, that's what we need to do. But obviously the NHS route was what I need to do. And yes, everything was free. It was just quite a long waiting list, which unfortunately is a lot worse nowadays.
What do you think that the NHS could do to improve their services when it comes to the trans community?
Get rid of West Streeting.
I agree with that.
That's a good start. That's a very good start.
That would be that. I mean, considering he decided to ban puberty blockers.
Yeah.
And I know so many trans youth within our community that have benefited from puberty blockers. And I mean, even being, yes, I was 16 at the time and then 18 when I started on HRT. So I wasn't quite at the point of puberty blockers, but I was still young enough where puberty hadn't really affected me that much. So things kind of developed as they should, but puberty blockers were very beneficial for a lot of people that I do know, because it gives them that time to stop things and make that educated decision in their own time. But I think, like, in terms of the things I've heard, it just needs a complete overhaul. I mean, when you look at the waiting times at the GICs currently in the UK, just to get to an initial first appointment, you're looking at 5 to 6 years.
That's too long. That's
it's far too long. I mean, the ironic side of that is my wife had her referral to a GIC and she was on the waiting list. During that time, she went fully private, did all of the years on HRT and living as herself, and eventually getting her surgery. And it wasn't until she'd actually had her surgery all of these years later that she then got a letter from the GIC saying, "Oh, you can actually now come see us." It's like, well, I've kind of done everything now. So it's frustrating and it's impacting on so many people's lives, because it's not being able to live as your authentic self and being stuck in a shell that just feels completely alien to you is so detrimental to people's mental health, in terms of depression, self-harm, suicide. And it's a hard thing to say, but suicide is such a big thing. And I know that one of my upcoming guests, it's an episode that'll be released soon, was with the amazing Caroline Littman, whose daughter was Alice, who sadly took her own life. And it's all the waiting lists on gender identity clinics and people just being stuck in limbo. And it's playing with people's lives. And unless you've got that financial backing, you're just stuck in this catch-22 situation. So, and unfortunately, because of the political climate as it is, I can't see things getting better in the near future. But we need to stay strong as a community, and those of us that have a voice and visibility within the community speaking up for the early ones and young ones within our community to try and say, we've got your back and we're here for you, so people know that they're not alone.
I completely agree with you. On all of that. I mean, whilst you were talking there, I was thinking to myself that it's very easy for people that are not living those experiences to be critical of things and of the situation, and to just not understand it because they just choose not to understand it. But they're not living the experiences that people like yourself have lived and gone through, and people that are going through those experiences now. And that can be just as harmful, because it's the ignorance, I think, of people as well, that they don't want to listen, they don't want to learn, and they don't want to support. And yet I think support for yourselves, for people that are going through what you've been through, is so important, especially now. Like you say, with the current political climate, we need those loud voices to say, no, we are here, we've got your back. I mean, what can cis people in the LGBT plus and wider community do to help trans people, especially with the daily attacks on the trans community of late?
I think it's firstly understand that these TERF, gender criticals, transphobes, whatever you want to call them, these attacks aren't just going to stop with us. And we're slowly starting to see some of these things come out with other marginalised communities. So people need to understand that, yes, it's all targeted at the trans community at the minute, but they're not going to stop there. They've got a very specific narrative that they're working towards. So it's about them understanding that we are a community and we need to stick together. It is LGBTQ plus I. We need to understand that we're all a community as a whole. And if we can have that solidarity and that strength and support each other, because I know over my time I've seen various fractions within our community where they deviate from each other or stuff like that. But to me, if we come together as a community and support each other, then it's a lot harder to tear us down. And I think it's just showing that support and being, if you've got platforms, to be vocal and visual about it. Sharon said, you know what, we're not standing for this and we're not going to support this. So yeah, I think that's kind of what needs to be done at the minute.
Yeah, I mean that's why we have. I mean that's why we have this podcast, and we've always made it clear the podcast is for the whole LGBTQ plus community, and that's why we like to have voices from each part of that community to come on board on the podcast, because I think it's important those voices are heard, and I think Josh would agree with me that we like to platform every part of our community because it's a way of them getting their voices heard.
Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, although we have covered a little bit of this topic on some other questions, in the media we're often led to believe, and a lot of the public do actually believe this for some reason, they believe that you can transition in like a week. You go to your doctors, you transition in a week, or you send your kid to school and by the time you pick them up at 3 they've transitioned. And this is clearly not true. It's clearly lies. But can you tell us why this is a lie? And I know we've covered like what the experience is actually like, but a little bit more about why this is a lie and like what the actual experience really is for youth and trans people who try to transition. Like going to your doctor, you don't just immediately transition in a week.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is something that we're seeing in the media and things like that, and what people are getting told, and it's just so untrue. Whether you look at it from the NHS perspective or even from a private perspective, that isn't even going to happen, because that initial thing starts with your doctor, and then you've got to get that referral to any department, whether that be through a gender identity clinic or getting referred into a private clinic. And then you've got those initial psychological evaluations where they need to understand you, understand your life, and to understand that this is right for you, because fundamentally when you get to certain stages there isn't any going back from this. So it's not a decision that is taken lightheartedly from these people, and a lot of evaluations need to be done. And then only after that initial process will they then look to start doing HRT, which then starts to do the physical changes. Now, to get to a certain stage of moving on from that, you're then looking at another 2-3 years. And obviously, the NHS perspective, as I said, you've got all of those years before you even get to that initial assessment. Then you've got the 2 years of the real life test and HRT. So then what, you're looking at 7, 8, 9 years in the grand scheme of things. But even from a private perspective, yes, things would move quicker, but they've still got that timeline of they expect you to be on HRT for a certain amount of time. And a lot of these surgeons privately still expect you to have been on for a certain amount of time and to have those referrals from lead clinicians and psychologists to actually back you getting surgery. So it's not someone just turning on saying, oh, hey, look, I've got 25 grand. I want boobs and my foofy doing. It just doesn't work like that. It's time, and it's a long, rigorous and emotional process.
Yeah, there's so much evidence of these lies. There's so many the stories you can look online at doctors and things, and it's all laid out there of how many years it takes and what you have to go through and all these. Because even the psychological tests, they must be quite traumatizing because you're having to go through such personal things with strangers. And
Yeah.
even with all this evidence out there and all these checks and balances that they say that should be in place, which are already in place, they still believe that you can just send your kid to school and they come out and they're a new gender. It's just insane to me that they genuinely believe it.
Yeah. But fundamentally, when you've got the government media and social media banging that narrative out to the wider community, it's harder to then discredit that, because these are the papers that people are reading. This is the news that people are seeing. So it's harder work for us than to say, well, no, that's not the case. That's absolute nonsense. And then when you've got these so-called experts like Cass and Sullivan and all of these other people that actually did no expert digging whatsoever and speaking to all of the relevant people that they should have done, and this is what's being put forward as evidence-based, it's like, no, it's like, I'm sorry, your reports are basically something that could be used as a book stop.
Exactly.
You've obviously talked about your transitioning, and it's quite clear that there's a hell of a lot of emotion behind your experiences, what you talked about. So beyond the practical aspects of transitioning, what are some of the emotional and psychological challenges that you have faced that others are likely to face as well?
I think it's obviously, yes, you've got all the emotional and psychological factors leading up to that initial point of, as they call it, your egg cracking. But then once you actually hit that point, it's then seeing these psychologists and these medical experts and going through this analysis and then starting on HRT and the emotional changes and everything with that. I mean, I remember times when I would sit there watching an advert and next minute I just start crying. It's like this whole emotional perspective change, but then also the positive aspects of that, because it was starting to then see my body match how it should be. But then added onto that, it's then the emotional baggage that's then added from aspects of society or family units, all of these things that can be added on to someone being trans, because I know with mine, I was kind of disowned quite a lot by my family, or a lot of them. So I had like all of that I was dealing with as well, and that's extremely common within the trans community. There's a lot of people that are supportive with friends and family and things like that, which is really needed, because in no way whatsoever is this an easy path to go through. And it is something that's going to impact on someone in a lot of psychological and emotional ways. So that support is needed.
I think you make a valid point there around, how people are disowned by their families and how the support out there is so much needed. I mean, going back to the last point around what Josh was asking, about how people think that you can just transition so quickly. No one would be putting themselves through transitioning through all of that emotion, the physical aspects, the psychological aspects, just as a fad, because that's how it's seen by the media, by people on social media. They think it's a phase, like they did with the gay community. They would say, oh, it's just a phase you're going through. But people wouldn't put themselves through that for something like a fad. It's who people are, and it's their life. It's them wanting to live their genuine, true, authentic selves and just live their life without hassle, without discrimination. And I'm kind of glad that you've shared what's effectively an emotional roller coaster that you've experienced, in that it just goes to show that transitioning is not an easy process, but it's made that little bit easier through having that support and having those people around you that need to be there.
And I think that is a big misconception, in the sense of, I know people are led to believe, as you said, it being this phase or a fad, or doing it for an easy life. It's like, I'm sorry, there's nothing easy whatsoever about being trans. I mean, who in their right mind would want to risk the things of being ostracized by family and friends, by society, putting themselves through these risky surgeries? And it's in no way whatsoever is it easy. But then, as you said, the other misconception as well is, well, it's a fad or something that's just popped up in the last few years. I think it was Corbyn that turned around and said trans people had only popped up in about the last 10 years or something. It's like, how on earth are you making such a ludicrous statement like that? I mean, for starters, I'm 28 years. And then if you look at like people before that, you've got the likes of Caroline Cozy, April Ashley, even going back to the World War and that famous picture of the Germans burning the books. Not a lot of people know that was actually outside of the Institute of Sexology, and burning those important medical documents of this institute, where the likes of Lily Elbe, the Danish girl, had her surgery. So these important and historical documents, just trying to erase them from history. So we go all the way back. We've always been there. Just people don't like to admit the fact.
Yeah, and I believe there is evidence as well of like hundreds of years ago. There are some documentations of trans people as well. So
I could go further back, but I didn't want to get too historic. I mean, there's a Roman emperor that lived and presented as female, and got the regime to refer to them as such. Then I think there was another really ancient community called the Galli or Galle. I can never pronounce it properly. And these religious female sect that had trans people or presenting as female within them. So there's historical evidence going all the way back.
Exactly, but people don't really like to look at history, do they?
No.
Apart from the war, they're obsessed with the war. It's the only thing they seem to bother about. But as you've said, you've transitioned about 28 years ago, so this question's perfect for people like you with all your experience. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's just starting to question their gender identity, especially the youth of today?
Advice that I would give would be to trust who you are and be proud of who you are. Because fundamentally, this is your life, your body, your choice, and nobody can make those decisions for you. If you're starting to come to that realization or have these questions, start to educate yourself about it, research about it. I mean, thankfully, we've got so much research out there now and such a big community out there now. And it's a lot more accessible than clearly it was back in my day. You could like literally just click onto the internet and find stuff, or on social media platforms. So if you're having these questions, look into it, research it, and if it feels right for you, then perhaps start to take steps forward or speak to the people that are close to you. But just trust who you are and believe in who you are.
Some great
I
advice.
think that's absolutely. You kind of preempted my last question just a couple of questions
Some
ago.
of mine had that as well.
But you've obviously already talked of a couple of misconceptions about trans people. Are there any other misconceptions that you feel that it would be right to clear up, so that those listening that might not realise are misconceptions can actually take something home with them, take something on board?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably a good one at the minute as well would be that the likes of trans women or people like myself go into female bathrooms for ulterior motives. It's like, I'm sorry, but all I've done for the last 28 years or up to this current day is I go in there, I go into a cubicle, I sit down, use the toilet, come out, wash my hands and leave. There's no peeking over stalls or peeking heads round corners and stuff like that. It's just, we're just getting on with our lives like anybody else. But these are misconceptions that are getting put forward. So
It's
I
fear
think that's
mongering.
a good one.
Well, I think if
Yeah.
anyone's peeking over doors and under stalls, it's the GCs. They're the ones who are looking under stalls and
Oh yeah,
preying on
One-
people.
The ones that
I
want to
think
police your
it's-
genitals.
that's the one. Yeah, it's like there's such a good meme at the minute of this picture of technically someone representing a GC popping their head under a stall, saying that I'm just checking your genitals. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. And it's like
Well, that's their logic, though.
it is exactly. It's like,
It's
so
just-
who's the ones that are like kind of making things feel really weird here?
Yeah, it's them. It's 100% them. Like you say, trans women are just going to the toilet, just like cis women, to use the toilet.
Yeah,
That is literally it. But you've got this
Exactly.
fear mongering from the likes of the Mold Queen, and other GCs like Graham Linehan and all the idiots like that, and that's putting it politely. But it's all this fear mongering that's making people think, oh, they're coming in to prey on us and spy on us and look at us, and no, that's not happening. That's not happening. Out of all the trans people that use the toilet that assigns to their gender identity, how many of those are going out committing crimes like that? None of them.
exactly. It's
None
like,
of them.
in all fairness, it's like, when have you actually seen any statistics or news about anything like that happening, it's not. So where on earth that logical thinking has come from? It's like these crimes and offences are happening from straight cis men that put people at risk. It's no statistical basis that it's a trans woman or a trans man, or it's ridiculous. But
Yeah,
these are the arguments that are getting put forward, and because they've got the financial backing and that narrative that's moving forward, it's actually getting believed.
But just finally, obviously this is a Pride episode. It's Pride Month, and one thing we have been asking people is, what does Pride mean for you or to you?
Pride means to me, first and foremost, it's being proud of who I am. And I will say, and I know that you have seen a lot of my posts on my socials and stuff, I'm proud to say that I'm a trans woman. And I will always be visible and vocal and fight for my community. Especially in these dark and uncertain times, because the ones that can provide that strength to our community at the minute, this is what's needed. But I think Pride as well also means it's our community, because that's what it is. It's a community. Being able to celebrate who you are and living your life, whether you're gay, lesbian, bi, trans, non-binary, queer, intersex, we all fall under this umbrella that makes us a community as a whole. And it's a fantastic and such a diverse community. So regardless, one way or another, there is that community out there for people. So you're never alone. And you never have to feel like you're alone.
I do love hearing people's different stances on Pride, because I think the one thing I've learned over talking to different people about what Pride means to them is Pride is different for everybody, and and I think Pride, the fact that Pride is different for everybody, just shows how diverse it is, and I just think that's brilliant.
It's very special.
I also do agree that it also is a protest.
Yes.
Because fundamentally, especially given how things are at the minute, especially for the trans community, we're having to do a lot of protesting. And that aspect of things isn't lost on us. So if you've got the capability and strength to engage in these things, then we need to, because we need to fight at the minute. So yeah, that element of protest is an important thing as well.
Yeah, and I think that don't just fight for trans rights because you're worried that you might be next. You should be fighting for trans rights because it's the right thing to do. That's my opinion. Don't just do it because you don't want to risk you being next. Do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
absolutely. But thank you, Louise, for coming on and chatting to us. Obviously, Josh and I are both very proud trans allies, and it's very easy for us, I think, to say our piece in support of the trans community. And I think it would be fair to say we might not always get it right. You know, there's still learning that we can have, and by speaking to people like yourself helps us, as well as anybody else listening, to better understand the trans community and what life is like for trans people by listening to those voices of those that are impacted, especially in current society. So thank you for sharing your experiences with us and with our listeners as well. And we hope that it helps to promote a positive a viewpoint on the trans community and gain that further support that is so rightly deserved.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's now time for your favourite part of the show, where Josh is a moany old bitch.
I was giving him a
me.
death stare then. You can't see it, but I was giving him a death stare.
The looks he's giving me right now. It's
knew
not
that
going to
was
be long
coming.
before. It's not going to be long before you're moaning about me for that.
That'd be too long. It'd have to be a whole episode.
Oh, goodness me. People would love that. So what are you moaning about this week, Josh?
Well, I did have a few things. I've trimmed it down to one, which is very difficult. So
For that.
I am going today. It will be you in a minute. Right. My complaint is, you know, when you go to a restaurant or wherever where you order food, and you sit down, you order your food, it arrives, and then just as you cut one piece off and it's just going in your mouth, the waiter spawns next to you. They're like, "Is it all right? Is everything okay? How is it?" And I'm just like, "I'll let you know when I've tried it." But I'd rather you ask me once my plate's empty, and then you come to collect the plate, then ask me. Don't they always ask me when I'm mid-chew?
It's, mind you, waiting until your plate's empty is a bit pointless then saying, is everything all right with it? Is it okay? No, it was fucking awful. That's why I've eaten it all.
If it's vile, I'll put my hand up and say, this is not right. Can you fix it? But just don't. They just spawn next to me every time I'm about to take a bite. And it's like when I'm mid-bite and I'm like, I'm eating. Now I've got to talk to you with my mouth half full of pasta or pizza or something because you're asking me how it is. Am I enjoying it?
I went through a phase when they were doing that with me, when I'd be eating out in restaurants, and I'd actually put my hand up sort of just to stop them and just point to my mouth saying, I'm eating, I'll chat to you in a minute. I'd make them wait and I'd be like, yeah, everything's fine, thank you.
Honestly, it's every single time, no matter where I am, they just spawn. They're not there when you need them. Like when you want another drink or something, no, you can't find them. They're on the moon. They disappear. Soon as you take a bite of food, they just appear like ghosts. They just spawn next to you and make you jump. And then before you've even answered it, like you'll say, yeah, my food's fine, thank you. And then you're about to ask them for another drink, and then they vanish again. They're just off.
Buggered off. They've buggered off. So, it's like, yeah, everything's fine. It's great. That's what I wanted to know. I can go now.
Yeah, and I want people to let me know if this happens to them as well, or do I just have a face where it's probably my face. I have a face of like a resting bitch face where I look like I'm disgusted. So they're like, oh, he don't look happy. Let's go and ask him. That might be the issue. Maybe it's just my face.
No, it's not your face. No, because that happens to me as well.
Maybe it's your face as well then.
Oh, I was talking about your face.
What's your complaint?
My complaint is about a company.
Oh.
That an online shopping company that shall remain nameless at the moment, just because I don't want to get sued.
Brown box.
Yeah. But no. So the other day, had a delivery. Right, I wasn't at home, and I couldn't take it in. So what did I do? I've set my delivery instructions for when I'm out. Leave it in a safe space, which is the I'm not going to say where it is. Anyway, so leave it in a safe space.
On the roof.
Giving away my secrets there. But no, got my safe space. Tell them where to put it. Leave it accessible for them, and they arrive. I speak to them on the Ring doorbell, and I say, "Yeah, can you leave it in the safe space as per my instructions, please?" No, can't do that. What? Why? Can't do that. It's our policy. What? So I'm having this two-way conversation with the delivery driver. Okay, can you leave it with a neighbour then? Can you either leave it next door or the one down, who are quite happy to take in my parcel for me? No, not allowed to. What? Why? And so I'm having this I think I was having this conversation for about 5 minutes with this delivery driver on my doorstep whilst I'm like
Through the Ring doorbell, you should add,
through the Ring
otherwise
doorbell.
people are going to
Yes.
think you were there.
Yeah. Well, I did say the Ring doorbell, and this conversation, this backwards and forwards conversation is going on. I'm like, I fail to understand why you can't leave my parcel, which I've paid for, in either my safe place or with a neighbour who's happy to take it in. And quoting policy at me. So I said, "Where's this policy?" And he couldn't answer me. It's just our policy. What?
Well, the thing is, when you pick a safe place, it does say this is at your own risk. So that's kind of like an agreement.
Yeah.
So although you've seen my issues, I have one of them really big parcel safes where you just drop the parcel in. I've had people refuse to leave it, even though it's a secure lockbox, or they'll just throw it over the fence anyway and completely miss the parcel box.
But the same company goes to the other extreme. They'll leave the parcel on the doorstep, ring the doorbell, and fuck off. They won't even wait for the doorbell to be. They don't even wait for me to answer the doorbell.
Before you've even opened the app, they're
door.
driving off.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hello, excuse me. Hey, wait, come back. And that's it. They're in the van. They're down the road. And I'm like, what is it? Can you leave it? Can you not do my safe space? It's just baffling. It's like, is it policy? Isn't it policy? What's this? What's that? And it's just frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Unfortunately, Nigel had to wait an extra 2 days for his gallon of lube.
It wasn't that. Thank you very much. I had that
And
directed to yours. Hey,
you'll need it.
Hey. Yeah, because it's your belated birthday present. Something for you to sit on.
Instead of your face. I've hijacked your complaint.
You know what? That is one of my favourite sayings. Right. If you go up to someone, you go up to someone and you say, "You have a nice face. It looks like a nice place to sit."
Just make sure you say that you don't just go around saying that to people in Starbucks.
Oh dear. But yeah, that's my complaint this week. It's just the whole thing of delivery drivers just not following delivery instructions and then making up their own bloody rules. And that is all we've got time for this week. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another episode. We hope that you've enjoyed what we've had to talk about, and we hope that you've enjoyed what Louise has been able to share with us, and we hope that you've learned something as we have. That's all we've got time for. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay safe and be happy.